Fearless Money Management podcast, where we empower women to take control of their finances. I'm Claire Strong, and today I'm chatting with Dawn Courtney, who's a financial professional all about saving for kids. Hi, Dawn, how are you?
I'm great, Claire. How are you?
I am doing good. It's funny because just before we started recording, so Dawn and I both have dogs. I have 3 of them, and she has one, Roxy. I've just met her off camera, and so we were just debating whether our dogs are going to interrupt our episode. So if you hear some scratching and barking and whining, you know what the crack is. It's either my 3 or Roxy's, or maybe all of them all together. So. We'll see how this plays out, Dawn. Oh my gosh! Well, thank you for joining us again today. For those who haven't already seen it, we had a fantastic episode with Dawn all about saving for retirement, so you need to check that one out. But today, this is a great one because as a mom myself of teenage girls now, so college is on the horizon. I'm really interested to chat with you about saving for kids and all of that good stuff. But just before we get into it, Dawn, just explain a little bit about what it is you do and why you love helping, particularly women, save for their kids.
Absolutely. I think, first and foremost, financial education is incredibly important. As I mentioned before, the U.S., we're not really educating our people on simple concepts about how money grows and about taxes. And we have a society now where everyone needs to go to college, right? But colleges are getting way more expensive. What we're finding is that, kids need to get financial aid, and then they go to school to better their education so they can get a better job. But then we find our children in severe debt. Then half of the time they cannot get out of this debt throughout their lifetime. And so it's a real issue, being able to plan for that money, especially if most families are not affluent and just can't pay for college. The kids either need to work really hard, which they should anyways, to get scholarships. But if they do need financial aid, we find ourselves setting our kids up for disaster with severe debt as they graduate. And so, I'm definitely passionate about this because I think it's something really simple as women and as parents that we could set up for our kids at very, very young ages, and it could really change the whole trajectory of their lives.
It is that powerful, isn't it? It is that important. Okay, so we're going to get onto college a little bit later, but first of all, when do you recommend that mums and parents start saving for their kids, and why is it so beneficial to start so early?
I think that they should start as soon as they can. 2 weeks old, we can start setting up things for the kids, and it's not just for college, it's life plans. These are plans for a lifetime. And to take a child through whatever milestone that could happen with a kid. I don't think every kid needs to go to college anymore. But I do believe that they should have the option if they want to go. Honestly, we can start setting things up for kids at 2 weeks old. You just need a social security number, and you don't need to invest as much money because there's a lot more time for compounding interest. And so, $50, $100, $150 a month, $1,800 a year, you're going to be setting your kids up for success.
So if you can start early, literally, you can start as early as 2 weeks old, which is incredible. But okay, so let's talk a little bit about savings accounts then. So you mentioned there, if you can just stash away even like $100 a month, every little helps. But where should we be putting that money, Dawn?
One of the main things that we do, I set one of these up for my niece, when she was 4, when I first got into the industry. But we have something that we like to call $1 million baby plan, which essentially, it is a savings plan, but it's also a plan that can grow your money, compounding interest, like we spoke about on the episode before. The sooner we can get people saving, the faster that their money can double every single year. So, our $1 million baby plan, it can be used for college. It can be used for their first car. It can be used for a down payment on a first home. I mean, let's be honest. That's the one thing most people struggle with when they go to buy a home is getting that exorbitant down payment. They can use it for that. They can use it for, when they get married. Guess what? Mom and dad, it's out of that account. You've been saving for a long time. Really, whatever that kid's life and goals and dreams are, you can utilize this money to help support that. So, nobody's in debt. I think if we can eliminate debt and just force savings and also helping our money grow and compound at a much faster rate, it's going to make a world of difference in that kid's life.
So as it relates to children's savings accounts, can you discuss a little bit about what's out there and how each of them are different?
I don't know anything particular about actual children's savings accounts, I guess, per se. I would just think it's a savings account, just like my parents set up a savings account for me. I don't think there's anything particularly special about them. A lot of times people can use a brokerage account for savings for college. I think probably the traditional account that most people know about through a bank, because remember, most people go to a bank for their financial education and literacy, is a 529 plan. So this is probably the most common college fund that most people utilize, which is great. I think it's always good to save for college and try to find avenues to do so. But I also don't think people understand the limitations that you can have with a 529 plan. So 529 plan, it's still in the market, just like a 401k. The market goes up, you're making money. What happens when the market goes down? You're losing money. So therefore, yet again, you're not, you're doing this yo-yo effect investing for college, which, is an issue. We want to make sure to not lose any money and just have it grow upon itself. If your child decides to not go to college because, that's just not what they want for their path, you have this money in this account, which they can't touch till 59 and a half. They still have that whole thing. They can move it somewhere else. But, at the end of the day, if they want to go to a trade school, they can't use it for that. And so you're actually very, very limited with a 529 plan if the child decides they don't want to go to college. And remember, you're losing money throughout that time frame. And so, and it can only be used for the actual college. It cannot be used for room and board. It cannot be used for certain things that kids need when they go to college, food, right? And stuff like that. So, there's a lot of limitations with it. And if the kid has a 529 plan and they still need financial aid, it will actually make the child eligible for less financial aid. So, it's a great plan to put something in place, but definitely a lot of people don't really realize the restrictions. And of course, the biggest one, losing money throughout the time frame. We actually had someone we sat down with. They've been saving for their kid for 13 years, no presents, nothing. And they didn't look at it. They had no idea they could lose money in that account. I think there was only $13,000 in the account. So,
okay, so here's the thing. I'm not from the US originally. So this 529 account, we don't have that type of thing in the UK. So this is already a new concept to me. But just listening to all the potential pitfalls of that account, it's quite astonishing. And the restrictions that account, that are placed onto that account. So, okay, so are you saying that on balance that is still a good thing to do? Or, what is your personal take on that? Because it does sound like there's lots of restrictions and risks involved with the 529, Dawn.
Yeah, I personally, I don't have any children myself, but if I had a child, I would not probably move forward with a 529 plan just because you're gambling with your kid's college. You're gambling with it. And if they decide they don't want to go to college, you're kind of stuck. So as I mentioned before, the $1 Million Baby Plan, it's very diverse. You can use it for whatever. They want to go to college, it can be used for that. They want to go to trade school, it can be used for that. They don't want to go to school at all. Maybe they're an astonishingly independent, person who wants to start their own business at a young age, that could be used for that. It could be used for so many things. It gives you flexibility, and really can just allow that kid to really just be able to thrive and have the funds to do so. And remember, all of this is going to be 100% tax free as well, which is a really big deal when we're looking at taxes. 529 is also tax free, but you can't lose that principle, which I think is a big deal.
Can you do both? Would you advise to do both? Maybe you can have your cake and eat it, have the 529, but also have money invested in something else, like you've just mentioned.
Personally, I wouldn't probably do a 529 for myself, or like my niece, for instance. We set up $1 million baby plan for her when she was 4 years old. She should have $500,000 by the time she's 9 now. In the next few years, she should have plenty of money to go to college if necessary. If she doesn't want to go to college, she can use it for whatever. She doesn't know I'm her favorite aunt yet, but she'll know pretty soon.
That's a pretty nice aunt she's got there, Dawn. Oh my gosh. But that's amazing. And I really wish I'd have known about this when my girls were younger. I've got some catch up to do, but you and I'll be talking offline about this a little bit more.
It's never too late to start. Let's be real. Never too late to start.
And you know what, and I want to just hammer home that point because, a lot of our listeners, Dawn, there are women listening to this who, have recently got divorced. They're in their 40s, their 50s. And, for some of us, we haven't been able to implement a lot of these great financial protocols that, we're learning about now through, the amazing guests we have on here, such as yourself, Dawn. And so, but one thing that we do tell our listeners is it's never too late to start. Hope is not lost. And so that's what I love about it. We're always here to encourage our listeners just to kind of put one foot ahead of the other and just make a start. But let's talk a little bit about some of the common mistakes to avoid when it comes to parents and mums in particular saving for their kids, and how can we avoid them, Dawn?
I don't know if that would be called mistakes, but I think what a lot of people do is they just get a separate savings account, maybe a high yield savings account, and they just start dropping money in there to save for college, right? It's not in anybody's bank account, but at the end of the day, you're not letting that money work for you, right? So it's just sitting there. And so I think probably one of the biggest common mistakes is not investing that money somewhere where it can grow and compound on itself. Because, then you can really make whatever you're able to save at whatever level you're at, you can help it grow and compound. And that's really going to help, them to have more access to money in the future. So I would think probably the biggest mistake is not finding a place to invest it. And by the way, I don't think this is anyone's fault. I think that people just don't know where to put it. And so they just don't do anything, right? And so and that's the whole thing through financial education and literacy, is showing people that there are options for them where they won't lose any money, that can have guarantees as they go through their life. And the reason it's called $1 million baby plan is because parents and this kid can leverage this account throughout their lifetime, and they should still have $1 million+ in this account to take them through their retirement. And so it's pretty incredible when you look at the numbers. But yeah, absolutely. We have an example where, someone does $150 for, since a kid's 1 year old, and they should have over $4 million in that account to take them through retirement. And remember, it's still growing. So, this is going to make it so people don't run out of money in retirement.
This is just an amazing idea. I love the name as well, $1 million baby account. That's such a cool name. But is this something, do we need like a financial planner like yourself or an expert to help us with this? Or can we, navigate this $1 million baby account on our own using apps, for example, or just, online resources?
You would definitely need a financial professional to set these accounts up. You do need a license to set these kinds of things up. They do not offer to banks. So don't go to a bank and say, hey, I need a college fund. They're going to probably put you in a 529. But yeah, I would definitely recommend reaching out to me and we could sit down. We could look at, obviously what you have going on and how much you could put towards something like this. But yeah, you definitely would need a financial professional to set this up for you. Absolutely.
I want to ask you a question about when to involve kids as it relates to savings. Because I've got teenage girls now and they are becoming more financially aware, but when should we be including them, and what types of things can we be including them with? Are there age appropriate things, for example? What would you say?
Something important to note about $1 million baby plan is that as the parent, you are the owner of this plan. Okay. So something that's really important to say is that you're going to set it up for them at whatever age, and you are the owner. Even when they turn 18, they are not the owner. I don't think I would probably, unless you have a very responsible 18-year-old, relinquish a big sum of money to them, but as a parent, you would make this decision on your own of when it's a good time to make them the owner of the account, when they're maybe out of college, when they're working, they would take over the payments of this and you would stop. But I would say, I would get them involved as soon as possible, understanding about this account. Understanding what it does, understand what, as they get more mature, to understand what they have. So when they, it also teaches them forced savings. I think it's really important. We have a microwave era right now where everyone wants the new purse, the new bag, the new this, the new that. But if we can teach our kids about saving money, so what they can have for their future, I think that, when you think your kid's ready for that, I think it's a great time to start so they can really appreciate the dollar of money. Something that my dad did when I was a kid is he made a little checkbook, which I don't know if this is really feasible now because nobody uses checkbooks. But when grades would come in, he would gift us money or whatever, and it would go into the checkbook. He didn't actually physically hand it to us, but teaching them that kind of savings, I think, will benefit any kid because then they realize it's their money, they're working for it. And then I think it gives it more value versus mom and dad just giving them money, right? So
yeah, it's funny you mentioned that because my girls have started to get little jobs like, babysitting or dog walking, and they are saving a percentage of their income, of their earnings, and they're saving up for something that they really want to buy rather than blowing their money. So yeah, I think from a mom's point of view, a mom of two teenage girls, I think it's great to get them involved with savings and to talk about it and for them to be aware that it's something that is absolutely necessary. What about government assistance? Is there any program or are there any incentives that we as parents can take advantage of as it relates to saving for our children? Can we get any help, basically, is what I'm asking you, Dawn?
As I am in personal finance, I definitely don't meld into the government side of things as much. But in my personal opinion, the government, what they have offered, I don't think is helping anyone get to their financial goals because most of the things they have is very, very taxable. It's regulated by them. And so personally, I would get with someone that is with personal finance that can help you set things up on your own. Just because in the end of the day, we don't know what the government's going to change their mind on things. So, personally, that's not my area of expertise. I could definitely look into it, but as if I was a parent, I would definitely want to set something up for my kids that I own personally that I have control over.
If we talk about moms with young children, so ideally, if we're following this strategy, this plan, we should be setting stuff up when they're literally a few weeks old. But obviously, as they get older, it may be that, we've mentioned college, we mentioned, the milestones like driving, for example. I've got a 16-year-old who's really wanting a car. I mean, as our kids get older, and it could be, we mentioned maybe college, maybe they're getting married, maybe they want to start their own business. Do we need to, if we're still providing for them at that time, do we need to change our saving strategies to kind of match their changing life? Because obviously they get older and their priorities and their wants may change.
Sure. I mean, what I always recommend just with any plan, there's always a range, to get started, start saving for that. Obviously if they are starting to work, they can start investing into their accounts. And you can invest in them as well. But I think probably the best strategy is just to always try to overfund these accounts. So the funds are there when things may be needed, right? So, I think probably the biggest thing that we all need to do as Americans, women as well, is that we need to concentrate on saving. Because, if we don't concentrate on saving, unfortunately, once we're in a bad way, it's going to be too late. And so, I would probably just try to keep saving. Tell your daughters, tell your kids, hey, listen, we have this account. And tax returns come back, put it in there, just really the cool thing is even if it's in this account, you can still pull it out if you need it, but at least, it's going to be growing at an 8 to 15% rate of return versus just sitting in the bank and devaluing every single year.
Okay. Anything else that you want to basically impart to our mums that may be listening to this podcast, particularly those like me who are just starting out on their savings journey for their children? What advice can you give to us, Dawn?
Sit down with a professional, look at your budgeting, obviously make sure you're on track first, because at the end of the day, I think as a lot of parents, they want to set their kids up and they don't really care about themselves as much. But at the end of the day, as parents, you need to set yourself up, because if something happens to us or happens to you as a parent, no one can provide that for the kids. So I think first and foremost, as parents, we need to make sure that we're set up. And then, of course, definitely setting things up for your kids, educating them about what they have, so they also can start realizing that they need to start saving for their retirement as well. Because unfortunately, if we don't take on this job on our own, unfortunately, no one's going to be there to save us, because as we mentioned, Social Security probably gone 2035, 2034, unless something shifts. 401k plans are not getting us to retirement. But what we can do is we can educate ourselves and make sure that we set up ourselves as well as our kids, so the next generations don't have to be struggling like they are today.
Oh, I love that, Dawn. And it's kind of that oxygen mask when you're on an airplane concept, fix your own oxygen mask before you fix your kids. And that obviously is your advice as it relates to savings, and it makes so much sense. So basically, us as parents, we need to get our own house in order, and then we can think about saving for our kids. So Dawn, we will make sure that your contact information is in our show notes. So if any of our listeners want to get in touch with you, and kind of tap into your wealth of knowledge on this, they're able to do that. And we'd love to hear from you at home. On the Fearless Money Management podcast, we love your feedback. Tell us a little bit about your personal story on this matter. How are you doing as it comes to saving for your kids? Did you do what Dawn suggests and start saving right out of the gate? I know I didn't, so I'm kind of catching up. But whatever your situation is, we'd love to hear from you. And thank you so much, Dawn. It's been a great episode today. And that brings us to the end of today's episode of Fearless Money Management. Please don't forget to subscribe, like, and leave us a review, because your support helps us to reach even more amazing women on their journey to financial freedom. Bye for now.